Ethan Cole had always been fascinated by the stars, but nothing had prepared him for the bustling energy of Zephyria's main spaceport. Ships of all shapes and sizes thrummed with life, alien and human alike moving through the terminals in a steady rhythm of commerce and curiosity. Some walked on two legs like humans, others floated, hovered, or even scuttled along the metal floors. The smells were a mixture of unfamiliar spices, synthetic oils, and something sweet that reminded him faintly of honey. He had been sent here as part of a diplomatic mission, to study Zephyrian culture and negotiate trade agreements, but his attention was caught by something, or rather someone far more personal. He saw her near one of the docking bays helping a group of stranded travelers. She moved with calm grace, her gestures precise and careful. Despite the throngs of aliens around her, she seemed almost untouched by the chaos. Ethan's eyes followed her as she assisted a small creature with a broken leg-like appendage, wrapping it carefully in what appeared to be a soft, luminescent fabric. Something in the way she carried herself made her stand out. Not her appearance alone, though she had a soft, natural beauty, but her quiet confidence and the way she made those around her feel safe. Ethan hesitated, feeling an unusual spark of curiosity and something closer to admiration. His colleagues had warned him that Zephyrians were reserved, not easily impressed or swayed by human gestures. Yet here she was, moving through the crowd with a presence that made even the most hurried travelers pause to watch. He had to know her. "Excuse me," he said, stepping closer, though not wanting to startle her. "I'm Ethan. I couldn't help noticing how skilled you are at helping others." She turned slowly, and for a moment Ethan thought he saw amusement flicker across her almond-shaped eyes. "I am Liara," she said, her voice soft but carrying a melodic quality that made his chest tighten. "Helping is necessary. Not remarkable," Ethan smiled, undeterred. "I find it remarkable. I would never have known what to do in that situation. Humans usually panic." Liara tilted her head slightly, considering him. "Humans panic, yet you came here. That is interesting." They fell into an awkward silence for a moment. Ethan felt a sudden nervousness he had rarely experienced in his life. Diplomacy and negotiation came easily to him, but approaching someone as graceful and enigmatic as Liara was different. "I don't usually do this," he said finally, "but would you like to maybe have dinner with me? I can show you some Earth customs, food, music, perhaps even a small taste of human culture." Liara's expression shifted. She didn't smile, but her eyes seemed to hold a spark of interest. She paused, studying him carefully. "You invite me for reasons beyond curiosity. Is this correct?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected her to see right through him. "Well, yes, I suppose curiosity brought me here, but also—" He paused, searching for words that felt both honest and respectful. "I want to know you better. I find you compelling." Liara's gaze lingered on him almost piercingly. Then, after a quiet moment, she said something that left Ethan momentarily speechless. "I will come, but not for the reason you think." Ethan blinked. "Not for the reason I think?" She inclined her head slightly. "Humans often invite for pleasure or amusement. I am not interested in either. I accept to learn, to observe, and perhaps to understand your species better." Ethan swallowed hard, a mixture of confusion and intrigue swirling inside him. He had expected politeness, maybe even rejection, but her words carried weight. She was serious. She wanted to see something beyond the surface, something essential about humanity itself. "I understand," he said, finally nodding. "Then I will do my best to make this dinner meaningful. Not just entertainment, but a true experience of Earth culture." Liara inclined her head in acknowledgement, her eyes studying him again. "I will judge then. Not you alone, but your species. Humanity is under scrutiny, whether you know it or not." Ethan felt a thrill of both fear and excitement. It was not every day that a first encounter came with such an unusual responsibility. And yet the thought of sharing Earth customs with her, and perhaps even learning from her perspective, sparked a deep curiosity within him. They parted for the moment, and Ethan spent the next few hours preparing mentally. He wanted to show her the best parts of Earth culture, its kindness, its creativity, its ability to adapt and endure. He rehearsed small explanations for the dishes he might serve, the music he might play, and the simple gestures of politeness and curiosity he hoped she would appreciate. When the time came, he met her at the agreed location, a quiet, elegant restaurant orbiting high above Zephyria's capital city. It had been designed to make all visitors feel welcome, with open windows that showed a panorama of the planet below. The atmosphere was calming, a blend of soft lights and muted colors that made conversation easy. Liara was already there when he arrived. She had chosen attire that was both elegant and practical, a flowing garment with soft luminescent patterns that shifted in color with her movements. She regarded him silently, her gaze assessing. "You are punctual," she noted. Ethan smiled. "I believe in keeping promises. And I didn't want to make you wait." They were seated, and Ethan began to explain the earth dishes in simple terms. He was careful not to overwhelm her, and she listened intently, asking questions about ingredients, origins, and the significance of each meal. Then came the music. Ethan had selected a few earth songs, instrumental, melodic, designed to evoke emotions without relying on words. Liara listened quietly. Her eyes closed for a moment, seeming to absorb not just the sound, but the rhythm and energy behind it. "You humans express emotion differently," she said softly. "Your music? It carries intent. I did not expect it to feel so alive." Ethan was pleased by her reaction. Music is one way we try to communicate what words sometimes cannot. It's personal yet universal. Liara tilted her head, a gesture he had started to recognize as thoughtful consideration. "I will admit I underestimated your species. I expected curiosity and fear, perhaps courage. But emotion expressed deliberately. It is interesting." Ethan felt a surge of relief and satisfaction. This was what he had hoped for. Genuine engagement, a bridge between their worlds. And yet he could sense she was holding something back, an unspoken reason for accepting his invitation that had not yet been revealed. As the dinner progressed, conversation drifted from cultural practices to personal experiences. Ethan spoke of his travels, the planets he had visited, the people he had met. Liara shared glimpses of her life on Zephyria, the way her people valued observation, learning, and balance. And then came the moment that shook Ethan. Liara leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting his with intensity. "I wanted to see if humans are truly capable of empathy. Not curiosity, not courage, but the ability to care for others when it is inconvenient, difficult, or dangerous. That is why I accepted your invitation." Ethan was silent for a moment, absorbing her words. She had not come for simple social interaction, or even companionship. She had come to test a deeper quality in him and, by extension, in humanity. I see," he said finally. "Then I hope I can meet your expectations." Liara regarded him quietly, as if deciding something important. "Perhaps. There is potential, but you will need to show it not just in words, but in action." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of both challenge and opportunity. This was no ordinary dinner. It was a test, subtle and unspoken, and he felt a strange exhilaration. The human capacity for growth, for empathy, for courage, these were qualities he had always valued. And now they were being examined in the most personal way. The evening drew on, and the city lights of Zephyria twinkled below them like a sea of stars. Ethan and Liara spoke of many things, simple stories, shared laughter, quiet moments of reflection. And through it all, Ethan realized something remarkable. He was not simply trying to impress her. He was learning, growing, seeing his own humanity reflected through her eyes. When the dinner ended, Liara stood gracefully. "I will see you again," she said simply. "Not because it is polite, but because there is more to observe. And I am curious." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. "I look forward to it," he said. As they parted, Ethan walked back to his ship with a sense of wonder. He had expected a casual encounter, perhaps a pleasant conversation. Instead, he had found something far more meaningful, a connection that challenged him, inspired him, and made him question what it truly meant to be human. And somewhere deep inside, he felt certain that this was only the beginning. Ethan spent the next day thinking about the dinner with Liara. Her words had lingered in his mind like a quiet echo. Humanity's capacity for empathy, not just courage or curiosity. He wondered how one could truly show such a quality, and whether he was prepared for the challenge. Yet despite the weight of the thought, he could not stop smiling at the memory of her eyes, the soft way she had moved, and the strange excitement that had stirred inside him. The invitation she had accepted had a curious condition: to learn, to observe, and perhaps to test. He was not sure what she would expect next, But he knew he wanted to meet her again, to share more of his world, and perhaps learn more of hers. The next meeting was at a quieter location, a restaurant built to feel like an open garden, with greenery and soft, warm lights. The decor mixed earth and Zephyrian designs, smooth stone floors, suspended pools of water that reflected light like stars, and subtle alien flora that glowed faintly. Ethan arrived early, choosing a table with a perfect view of the city below. He wondered if Liara would arrive at the exact moment, as she had the night before, or if her timing would reflect Zephyrian customs, where patience and observation were highly valued. When Liara entered, Ethan could feel the difference immediately. She walked slowly, deliberately, her gaze sweeping the room as if cataloging every detail. Yet the moment her eyes met his, a small curve of acknowledgement appeared on her lips. She approached without hesitation. "You are on time," Ethan said, smiling. Liara shook her head slightly. "Time is relative. Punctuality is less important than attention. You noticed the light changes in the ceiling fixtures. That is unusual." Ethan looked up, surprised. She was right. He had not even consciously noticed the subtle shifts in light meant to make diners feel calm. "I guess I pay more attention when someone interesting is around," he replied with a small laugh. Liara regarded him silently for a moment. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is your human instinct to focus on what is unfamiliar." The meal began with quiet conversation, each of them sharing stories about their lives, their worlds, and the challenges they had faced. Ethan found that he was learning as much from her as she might be learning from him. She asked thoughtful questions about human society, about how decisions were made during crisis, and about how empathy guided choices. "You humans often speak of morality," she said softly, "but morality is subjective. What makes your species unique is that you act according to empathy, even when rules or survival might suggest otherwise. That is intriguing." Ethan nodded, feeling proud but also thoughtful. "We try, not always perfectly, but we try." Liara's eyes flicked toward him. Try is not enough when faced with real consequences. One must act decisively. As they spoke, Ethan noticed subtle shifts in her demeanor. She was not simply observing. She was testing him, pushing him to think, to reflect. He realized that every question she asked, every story she told, was designed to reveal something deeper about his character. After the main course, Ethan decided to show her something uniquely human. He had brought a small instrument, a stringed device that produced simple but beautiful sounds. He played a few notes, letting the melody rise and fall in the quiet space between them. Liara watched closely, her head tilted, her eyes following the movement of his fingers. "You play with intention," she said quietly. "Not merely to produce sound. There is care, precision, and emotion. You communicate without words. That is admirable." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had hoped to impress her, but instead he felt as if she were opening a door for him to understand something about himself. "Music is how we share what is hard to explain," he said. "Sometimes it says what words cannot." Liara considered this for a moment. "Then perhaps music is the true test of empathy. To play and understand without the need for language." Ethan's mind wandered to the earlier words she had spoken, that she had accepted his invitation to see if humans were capable of empathy. Perhaps this was part of the test, not just words, but actions, gestures, and the care shown in simple things. Suddenly, the peaceful moment was interrupted by a distant alarm. The spaceport trembled slightly as a warning system blared. Ethan's instincts kicked in immediately. "What is happening?" Liara asked, her voice calm but edged with concern. "There's trouble," Ethan replied. He didn't need to explain further. Her eyes immediately shifted to scanning the environment, observing not just him but the space around them. "Stay here for now," he added, though she did not move. Liara's gaze met his. "I am observing. I am not interfering unnecessarily, but I will act if required." Moments later, chaos unfolded in the streets below. A containment unit from a nearby laboratory had failed, and a creature, an alien species unfamiliar to most humans, had escaped. It was large, moving with speed and intelligence, and clearly frightened. Civilians scattered in panic. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. "We need to help," he said, reaching for a nearby security comm link. Liara followed his movements, silent but attentive. He coordinated with the security team, giving clear instructions while also keeping an eye on the civilians trapped near the scene. Despite the danger, he moved toward the creature carefully, using gestures and calm voice commands to guide it away from the crowd. Liara observed closely, noting the way he assessed risk, protected others, and controlled the situation without panic. "You act with courage," she said quietly, almost to herself. "And care? Even when fear could justify inaction, this is significant." Ethan continued his efforts, and slowly the creature was guided back into containment. No one was harmed, though a few people were shaken. Liara stepped forward once the immediate danger had passed, her eyes studying him closely. "You acted as I expected," she said. "Well, but not perfectly. Your hesitation could have been costly if the situation had been more dangerous. Yet your intention was correct and your empathy guided your actions. That is rare." Ethan nodded, breathing heavily. "I did what I had to do. I hope that was enough." Liara inclined her head. "Enough for now. But there is more to observe. Humanity is capable of both great courage and significant error. You have shown promise." They returned to the restaurant once the spaceport was secure. Ethan felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. This was far beyond any dinner he had anticipated. He had been tested, and he had acted according to what he believed was right, under observation. And Liara, with her quiet grace, had seen it all. As they resumed their seats, Ethan spoke softly. "I hope I didn't disappoint you." Liara's gaze met his, steady and discerning. "You have not disappointed, but do not rely solely on instinct or courage. Empathy requires thought, observation, and sometimes restraint. The greatest tests are not those of bravery alone." Ethan nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. He realized that Liara was not only testing him but teaching him, guiding him to understand a deeper truth about humanity. They shared a quiet meal after the chaos, speaking in thoughtful tones, each learning from the other. "You humans are complex," Liara said after a moment. "You possess emotion, creativity, and courage, yet you often act without full understanding. That is what makes your species fascinating and challenging." Ethan smiled, though it was tinged with humility. "I suppose that is true. We are a mix of contradictions, hope, and mistakes. But we try. That's what matters, right?" Liara's eyes softened slightly, a rare show of warmth. "Yes, trying with intention, guided by empathy, is what I hope to see. You have shown it." As the evening drew to a close, Liara stood gracefully. "There is more to observe, and more tests. But tonight you have given me insight into humanity. That is valuable." Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation. The dinner had been more than a social engagement. It had been an exploration, a challenge, and a revelation. He realized that Liara's interest was not casual curiosity. She was studying him, yes, but also humanity itself, its capacity for empathy, for courage, and for growth. When they parted, Ethan felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. The dinner had revealed truths, tested abilities, and hinted at what was to come. Liara's parting words lingered in his mind. "Next time there will be greater challenges. You will see not only yourself but the potential of your species. Be ready." As he watched her disappear into the night sky above the city, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had always faced challenges, but this was different. Now he realized their very essence was under observation, and he wanted to prove that humans were capable of more than anyone, alien or human, might expect. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The following days were filled with preparation, observation, and anticipation. Ethan felt the weight of Liara's quiet challenge pressing on him, a reminder that humanity's strengths were being watched. He moved through his daily routines with a heightened sense of awareness, noticing small details in human behavior that he had taken for granted. How a mother soothed a crying child, how people offered help without asking for reward, and how the smallest acts of kindness often carried the most meaning. Liara did not visit immediately. Instead, Ethan caught glimpses of her at the spaceport and in public places, always watching, always learning, yet never interfering. He sensed that she was forming her own understanding of humans beyond what he could show in conversation. Her eyes seemed to study everything, yet they always returned to him, as if measuring his actions against the standard she carried quietly within herself. Finally, she arrived at his quarters with an unspoken urgency. There was no preamble, no small talk. Ethan felt the air shift the moment she entered. Her posture was alert, her eyes scanning the room before focusing on him. "There is an incident," she said simply. "You must come." Observation only goes so far when action is required. Ethan stood quickly. "What kind of incident?" Liara's gaze did not waver. "The spaceport. A ship from a distant system malfunctioned. Civilians are at risk. I am coming with you." Ethan felt a familiar surge of adrenaline tempered by the awareness that this would not be a simple rescue. "Let's go," he said. The streets of the spaceport were in chaos. A ship had lost control during landing, its energy shields flickering, leaving it vulnerable to collision with nearby transport vessels and crowded pedestrian areas. Panic swept through the crowd. Aliens and humans alike scattered in all directions, some freezing in fear, others attempting to assist. Ethan's instincts kicked in immediately. He activated his comm device, contacting the spaceport authorities. "Coordinate evacuation in sectors A through D. Focus on civilians near the ship. Keep them calm and clear of the landing area." Liara followed him silently, observing his every movement. She did not interfere, but her presence seemed to sharpen his senses. He could feel her evaluation in the air around him, the weight of her attention pressing him to act decisively and correctly. A group of civilians were trapped near the ship, unable to move due to the mass of alien cargo and debris. Ethan moved toward them, assessing the situation quickly. He instructed a nearby Zephyrian security officer, "Lift the crates this way. Use the energy field to stabilize them. Guide the civilians out slowly, step by step." As they worked, Ethan noticed Liara standing nearby, analyzing the structural integrity of the ship and the potential hazards. "You do not hesitate," she observed quietly. "Yet there is caution in your actions. That is human. You value life above efficiency." Ethan nodded without stopping. Efficiency alone can cost lives. Empathy requires consideration even under pressure. A sudden spark of energy from the malfunctioning ship jolted the ground. A small blast threw debris toward the crowd. Ethan reacted instantly, pulling a nearby alien child to safety and shielding them with his body. Liara's eyes widened for a brief moment, then narrowed as she assessed the next danger. She moved quickly, redirecting a small group of humans and aliens toward a safer exit, her movements precise and calm. "You intervene only when necessary," she said, once the immediate danger had passed. "That is wise. Overreaction can be as harmful as inaction." Ethan nodded, catching his breath. "I have to balance risk with the outcome. Every life matters," the rescue continued. Ethan coordinated the efforts of humans and Zephyrians, using both his knowledge and instincts to guide everyone safely. Liara followed closely, noting his decisions, his courage, and most importantly, the compassion that underpinned every action. Once the civilians were safe, Ethan turned to address the authorities. "Ensure that the ship is stabilized before anyone approaches. Maintain calm. This is not just about safety, it is about preserving trust." Liara's gaze softened slightly. "Trust. You understand that leadership is not only about action but about reassurance. You value the lives and emotions of others, not merely their compliance." Ethan exhaled slowly, the tension of the past minutes leaving him. "I try. I don't always succeed, but I try." Liara regarded him carefully. "You have succeeded today. But remember, success in crisis is only part of the measure. The true test is how you reflect and learn afterward." As the immediate danger passed, Ethan and Liara stepped aside to observe the aftermath. Civilians were shaken but unharmed. Security teams worked efficiently and the ship's energy shields had stabilized. Yet Ethan felt a lingering tension, a reminder that even the best intentions could fail under unforeseen circumstances. "You handled yourself well," Liara said quietly. "Your courage is evident, but it is not reckless. That is the difference between instinct and empathy. Humans often confuse the two." Ethan considered her words. "I've learned to balance instinct with reflection. But sometimes it's difficult to know if the right choice is obvious in the moment." Liara nodded slowly. "That is the test of maturity, not just of courage. To act in the moment with the awareness of consequence. You have shown potential, but potential must be cultivated." Ethan felt a surge of humility. Her praise was not empty. It was measured, analytical, and precise. She had not simply observed him, she had evaluated him, seen his strengths, and noted where he could improve. "Why do you test me like this?" he asked finally, curiosity and honesty mingling. Is it because I am human or because you see something unique in me? Liara's eyes met his, steady and calm. Both. You are representative of your species. I seek to understand what humans are capable of. Your courage, your empathy, your ingenuity. And you specifically have shown qualities that are rare, even among humans. That is why you are significant to this observation. Ethan felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. It was not merely personal recognition. It was the weight of representing humanity itself. He realized that every choice he made, every act of empathy or courage, was being observed not only for him, but for what it revealed about the human race. They spent the rest of the day reviewing the events, discussing the choices he had made, and analyzing alternative actions. Liara's observations were precise and thoughtful, providing insight without criticism, offering guidance without direct instruction. Ethan listened carefully, learning as much from her analysis as he had from the direct experience of action. You have shown that humans can balance emotion and reason, Liara said, as the day drew to a close. Yet you must remember, empathy is not static. It grows through practice, reflection, and challenge. Today you demonstrated it under pressure. Tomorrow it may be tested in ways that cannot be anticipated. Ethan nodded, feeling the gravity of her words. He realized that the dinner and the subsequent incidents were not isolated lessons. They were part of a larger journey, a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human. As they parted for the night, Liara's gaze held his for a moment longer than usual. Rest, Ethan. Tomorrow will bring new observations, new challenges. Be ready to see yourself and your species in ways that are unfamiliar. Ethan watched her leave, a mixture of anticipation and resolve filling him. He understood now that Liara's presence was more than companionship or curiosity. It was guidance, evaluation, and an invitation to grow. Humanity's strengths, he realized, were not merely survival or ingenuity. They were empathy, courage, and the ability to reflect and improve. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan felt a quiet determination. He would meet every challenge, every observation, every test with honesty, courage, and care, not merely to impress Liara, but to honor the potential of humanity itself. That night, as he gazed out at the stars, Ethan thought about the events of the day, the panic, the decisions, the moments where courage and empathy intersected. He realized that each act, no matter how small, had consequences beyond the immediate. Humans were not perfect, but they were capable of growth, of learning, and of extraordinary deeds when guided by understanding and compassion. He smiled to himself, thinking of Liara and the quiet challenge she had set. The path ahead was unknown, filled with tests he could not yet imagine. Yet for the first time he felt truly ready to face them, not alone, but with the knowledge that humanity itself was under observation and that he could rise to meet that standard. And in that realization, Ethan felt a surge of hope. Humanity had potential. It was fragile, yes, and often flawed, but when courage and empathy were combined, it was remarkable. Liara's presence was a mirror, showing him both the imperfections and the extraordinary qualities of his species. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but tonight, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He understood now that true heroism was not about glory or recognition. It was about empathy in action, courage tempered by reason, and the willingness to face uncertainty with a steady heart. And he knew, deep down, that with Liara observing, guiding, and challenging him, the journey ahead would reveal the best of humanity in ways he had never imagined. The days following the spaceport incident were quieter, but the tension in Ethan's mind had not eased. He had proven himself capable under pressure, yet he knew Liara's observation was ongoing. Her tests were not always visible, nor were her evaluations announced. Every choice he made, every interaction, could reflect the strengths and weaknesses of humanity itself. Liara had invited him to accompany her on a small journey beyond the Zephyrian orbit. The purpose had not been explained, but Ethan sensed that the next stage of their interaction would be different. This was not a dinner, nor a rescue. It was an opportunity to see the world, or perhaps the galaxy, through her eyes, and for her to observe him in circumstances beyond his control. The ship she led him to was sleek, unlike any human craft he had seen. Its hull shimmered with colors that shifted as it moved, reflecting the light of Zephyria below. Inside, the controls were unfamiliar, but Liara guided him patiently, explaining only what he needed to operate the ship safely. There was no hurry, no pressure, only the quiet hum of the vessel and the stars stretching endlessly ahead. "You humans often seek adventure," she said, as they prepared to leave orbit. "You explore not only for survival but for curiosity, knowledge, and sometimes pride." "It is fascinating," Ethan nodded. "Exploration is part of who we are. We learn not just for ourselves but to understand the universe around us, and maybe to understand ourselves better." Liara's gaze softened slightly. "Perhaps that is why I accepted your invitation. To see if humans are more than instinct, more than survival. To see if you can rise to challenges with wisdom and empathy. And now, we continue that observation." The journey took them to a nearby asteroid field. Ethan marveled at the beauty of the rocks floating silently in the void, glinting with minerals that reflected the light of distant stars. Yet there was danger here as well. Asteroids could move unpredictably, collisions could be fatal, and navigation required careful calculation. "This is a test," Liara said, almost casually. "Not only of skill but of patience, observation, and foresight. Many species would rush blindly, focusing on speed or power. Humans, I am curious about your approach." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I hope I can show you the best of humanity." He guided the ship slowly, observing the trajectories of each asteroid, adjusting speed and direction carefully. Liara watched silently, her eyes following his every movement. He felt her scrutiny, yet it was not oppressive, it was encouraging. He realized she wanted to see how he combined instinct with reason, courage with care. Hours passed, and the ship moved through the field without incident. Ethan's focus never wavered. His mind constantly calculated risk, safety, and the potential for error. Liara finally spoke, breaking the silence. "You acted with precision but also with care. You did not rush. You considered consequences, that is, admirable." Ethan relaxed slightly, though he knew the test was not over. It's not just about avoiding danger. It's about protecting others. "That's what empathy requires," Liara inclined her head. "You understand. Humans can be impulsive, but when guided by thought and care, they are remarkable. You are proof of that." As they continued, a faint signal appeared on the ship's sensors, an emergency beacon from a nearby research station. The energy reading suggested a malfunction in the station's containment systems. Ethan's heart sank. Another test, another chance to act. Liara's expression was calm. "You will face choices. Prioritize life, then mission. That is the measure of your species' potential." Ethan adjusted the course immediately. "Understood. We move carefully. We save lives first." Arriving at the station, they found chaos. The containment units had partially failed, and several small alien species were loose within the station. Panic was spreading among the station staff, both human and alien. Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Liara, stay here," he said. "I'll coordinate the evacuation." She shook her head slightly. "Observation requires presence. I will not interfere unless necessary, but I will be watching." Ethan felt a surge of responsibility. Every decision mattered, not only for the lives at risk but for what Liara would conclude about humanity. He organized the staff, assigned rescue teams, and moved carefully to stabilize the containment units. One unit began to overheat, threatening an explosion. Ethan assessed the risk. He could attempt to stabilize it manually, but that would place him directly in danger. He hesitated for only a moment before deciding protecting life mattered more than safety. He moved in, carefully adjusting the controls, redirecting energy flows, and preventing the unit from detonating. Liara observed silently, her expression unreadable. Yet Ethan could feel her evaluation, precise and thorough. He realized that every choice, every action, was being measured not only for courage but for wisdom and empathy. Once the immediate danger passed, Ethan coordinated the evacuation of the remaining staff and ensured the loose creatures were safely contained. Exhausted but satisfied, he stepped back, letting the magnitude of the situation sink in. Liara finally spoke. "You acted well. Your courage is evident, but it is guided by thought. Your empathy directs your decisions. That is the quality I sought to observe." Ethan nodded, breathing heavily. "I just did what I hoped was right." Liara inclined her head slightly. "And that is precisely what distinguishes humans. Not perfection, but intention. The willingness to act thoughtfully, with care, under pressure. That is rare even among advanced species. Ethan felt a swell of pride tempered by humility. He understood that her observation was not only about him, but about humanity as a whole. Humans were capable of extraordinary deeds, yet their true strength lay in the combination of courage, empathy, and thoughtfulness. As they departed the station, Liara finally revealed more of her purpose. "My people have studied humans for centuries," she said. "We have observed bravery, ingenuity, and curiosity. But we sought something deeper, your capacity for empathy, your willingness to act in the best interest of others, even when it carries risk. That is what makes your species remarkable." Ethan listened intently, awed by the weight of her words. "So all of this, was to test humanity?" Liara nodded. "Yes. And you have shown that humans are capable of more than most would expect. Not perfect, but capable. Courage without empathy is reckless. Empathy without courage is weak. You have demonstrated both, tempered by reason. That is exceptional." Ethan felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not for himself alone, but for his species. He realized that humans, though flawed, had potential beyond survival. They could inspire, protect, and grow in ways that even other intelligent species might not anticipate. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Not just for observing me, but for showing me what humans can be. It changes the way I see myself and my people." Liara regarded him with a rare softness. "You have risen to the occasion, Ethan. You represent humanity well. But this is only the beginning. Your species will face tests that challenge not only survival, but morality, wisdom, and empathy. You must continue to learn, to act with care, and to grow." Ethan nodded, understanding the depth of her words. The journey was far from over, and the challenges ahead would not always be clear. Yet he felt a quiet confidence, knowing that humans were capable of rising to those challenges, guided by the very qualities Liara had observed. As they traveled through the stars, Ethan reflected on the path that had brought him here, from a simple dinner invitation to life-threatening incidents, to profound revelations about his species. Liara's presence had been both a mirror and a guide, showing him strengths, weaknesses, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. "You humans are fascinating," Liara said after a moment, her voice calm but warm. "You are not always perfect, but your capacity to act with courage and empathy is inspiring. It is rare to see a species so willing to learn, to grow, and to care for others." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. "We have flaws, yes, but we try. And when we try sometimes, we can achieve remarkable things." Liara inclined her head, a small smile appearing on her lips. "Then perhaps the future holds more for your species than I had imagined. Perhaps humanity is capable of inspiring not only themselves, but others." Ethan looked out at the stars, feeling the infinite possibilities stretching before him. The journey with Liara had begun as a simple curiosity, a dinner and a test. But it had evolved into something greater, a revelation of what it truly meant to be human. And as the ship glided silently through the cosmos, Ethan knew that the story of humanity was only beginning. There would be challenges, dangers, and choices yet to face. But with courage, empathy, and wisdom guiding every step, humans could rise to meet them and perhaps even inspire other species along the way. Liara's presence beside him was no longer merely observation. It was partnership, understanding, and hope. Together they traveled onward, two beings from different worlds, yet united by the quiet strength of insight, courage, and compassion. And somewhere deep within, Ethan understood the truth. Humans were not merely survivors. They were capable of greatness, shaped by empathy, guided by courage, and defined by the choices they made for the stars stretched before them, endless and bright. And with each passing moment, Ethan felt the quiet thrill of possibility. The universe was vast, full of challenges and wonders, but humanity, imperfect, resilient, and extraordinary, was ready to